If you have any questions during our meeting, you can go ahead and use the Q&A feature to submit your questions, and we will end our time together going over those questions. If after our time together you think of some questions or would like to go more in depth with Lesson Builder, feel free to contact your training rep that you work with directly, or contact our training team at our shared email address, training@hawkslearning.com, and someone on our team would be happy to help. So I have my gradebook open and my screen shared with you. We are going to go ahead and get started with Lesson Builder. So I'm going to access Lesson Builder by selecting Assignments and then Curriculum from the bottom left. And here I have my sections and the curriculum listed. It's important to note that if you currently have the default curriculum listed for your section, you will not be able to utilize the Lesson Builder tool. What we're going to look at today is the features that we've released over the past year that allow you to fully customize the content in a variety of ways. And in order to do that, you need to have made a copy of our default curriculum. The things that we're going to go over are going to include the steps for adding and removing questions from the curriculum into the Practice and Certify, moving questions between lessons, and finally, editing the Learn screens to include your own content or learning tools that you want students to access directly through Hawks. So now I'm going to select my section, which will then open up my curriculum. As you can see here, all of my lessons on the right-hand side are linked. So if I want to edit a specific lesson and use the Lesson Builder tool, I'm going to select the lesson name. Lesson Builder is going to open in a new tab in my browser. As you know, with our default curriculum, you are going to already have pre-created lessons where questions have been selected for you to use in Practice and Certify. As you become more comfortable with Hawks, you likely may want to make some adjustments to those questions, and that's where Lesson Builder is going to come in. On the left-hand side, you should see our available question bank for lesson 7.5, and on the right-hand side, you see the questions that are currently in use for this lesson. If you want to add a question from the question bank to the assignment, you can simply use the add icon in the top right-hand corner of each question. Right now I have 16 questions. When I select add, I know that it's been added because I now have 17 questions. Similarly, if you would like to then remove a question from the assignment, you can use the remove button in the top right, and now I'm back to 16 questions. If you're going to be making adjustments where you're adding multiple questions or removing multiple questions at a time, you can also use the checkboxes that you see to the left of the serial number. As I use those checkboxes, this add button in the top now has a number 3 in parentheses. When I select that button, it's going to add these 3 questions into my lesson. Same thing goes on the right-hand side. If I want to remove multiple questions, I can use the checkbox to the left of the serial numbers and use the bulk remove to remove those two selected questions. So gives you that individual as well as group addition and removal of questions. When looking at your available question bank, you do have two columns here that are now sortable, which I love. So if you want to sort by occurrences, so how many times is a question in use, you can select this one time and it's going to bring all the questions in use to the top. Notice my two that are being used twice are at the top. If you would like to view questions that are not currently in use, I can select occurrences again, and all of my questions that are not being used are now at the top of my question bank. So if you want to add questions that aren't being used, that's a great feature to use before selecting and prevent some of that scrolling through the list. If you would like to sort the question bank by difficulty, you can do the same thing here with this column, and one click, it brings the highest difficulty to the top, and then medium and low. Second click, and it's going to go low, medium, and high. At the top of the question bank and the top of your assignment bank, you're going to see a search bar. This is now available to make it really easy for you to find specifics. So if you're looking for a certain question type, maybe a keyword in the objective, you can search that here. You can also search by serial number or difficulty status. Same thing, question bank side and assignment side. You can search on each side and pull what you're looking for to the top. When you make any changes, including adding and removing questions, make sure that you do save in the bottom right and keep an eye on the mastery level and be sure to adjust it to the percentage that you are looking for. That's not going to adjust as you add and remove questions. So make sure that if you do significant changes with adding or removing questions, your mastery level stays around what you are looking for. One of the features that we are most excited about at Hawks to share with our users is right here in the top right-hand corner of the question bank. This is going to allow you to pull questions from other lessons and other chapters using these drop-downs. So right now I'm working in lesson 7.5. but I can use this drop down to see question banks from other lessons. There are a few ways that you could use this feature to really further customize your course and really benefit your students. One thing to consider is use this as a way to continuously pull in some of those remedial lower level questions that you may want to spiral throughout the semester. This is going to ensure students are continuing to practice those foundational skills and giving them the opportunity to consistently reassess their knowledge of those prior topics that they've gone over. It also helps students to more clearly make those connections between content. So if you're adding some of those earlier skills and topics, students can very clearly see that that content is directly connected to this higher level, more challenging topic that they're working on. So one way is to add in those lower level questions. Another way that you could use this tool is to either combine multiple lessons. So maybe you want to take 2 lessons that are on similar topics and combine them and just have students complete it in one lesson. Or you want to take a larger topic and split it into 2 lessons. One thing to keep in mind when you're looking at this tool as a way to combine or split lessons is that it's allowing you to pull the question banks from other lessons, but it's not going to automatically pull those learn screens for you. With that in mind, we do have workarounds that are going to allow you to incorporate the information that you need in learn screens, and we're going to discuss that after we look at splitting and combining lessons using this tool. So starting, we're going to think about how could we use this to combine questions from 2 lessons into one. You can very easily do that. Like I mentioned before, a great way to spiral. So maybe I want to go all the way back to chapter 1 and include some information from a lesson in chapter 1 that is directly related to the information in lesson 7.5. I used my drop downs to select the lesson where I want to pull my questions from. And now I have the available question bank, and I have all of the same columns, so I can still sort by objective, by difficulty level, and use that to help when adding my questions into a lesson. As you do that too, you can use the search bar over here to kind of search and keep track of the questions that you have added over from this previous lesson. So if I wanted to add a couple of these, I'm just going to use the checkbox and select add. And when I scroll up, I now have 19 questions. They all went to the top of my lesson, and I see 3 1.4b questions in the assignment for lesson 7.5. Again, when I do this, I need to make sure that I save these changes. Similarly, as you add, you can also continue to remove questions if you would like. That is the first step if you want to combine lessons. You use these drop downs, select your questions, add them over to your assignment, and then save. So now I have lesson 7.5, which has questions from lesson 7.5, and additionally has a few questions from lesson 1.4b, which are earlier lower level skills that I've included in this lesson. If I want to split a lesson into 2, for example, I don't want to add to this lesson 7.5. I want to split this lesson about equations into 2 separate lessons. I can also do that really easily. What I need to do before I get started is I need to think of and identify one lesson that I know that I'm not going to use. One that I think of right away is the chapter review or an appendix lesson. So for this one, I know I'm not going to use the chapter 7 review, so I'm okay with essentially taking over that lesson and splitting the content from 7.5, half in 7.5 and half in the chapter 7 review. The way that I would do that is I would go to Chapter 7 Review and open it in Lesson Builder, because this is where I want to house half of my questions. So this is the lesson that I'm okay taking it over. If you notice over here on the right-hand side, I've already gone in and added some questions from 7.5 here. I did that by selecting 7.5 from the drop-down and using the available question bank. What you'll also notice if you search through the assignment is that I removed all of the other questions from this Chapter 7 review so that it is truly 7.5 split between the Chapter 7 review and Lesson 7.5. One thing that I would encourage you to think of is if you are going to be splitting lessons, make sure that your questions aren't repetitive in both. So I would then go back to 7.5 and remove these questions so that students are focusing on 2 different question sets in each lesson. One kind of last thing to note is that I want to ensure that Learn matches the new content. And I did mention that when I do the moving of questions, the Learn screens aren't going to automatically be moved as well. What I'm going to do here is actually reference lesson 7.5 in my Learn screens for Chapter 7. And I'm going to show you that in just 1 minute. The last thing that I do want to note while we're on this page is that sometimes we hear instructors want to rename lessons if they do splitting or combining of lessons. What's really important to know about that is done at a course administration level. I'm not a course administrator in this gradebook, so I don't have the option to rename my lesson. The reason being is it's going to impact the entire course ID, not just my sections or my curriculum, but every instructor, every curriculum will have that lesson renamed. So that's important to remember and think about if you're a course administrator. It works particularly well if you're a school that shares the same master curriculum for all instructors and all sections. Then it works really well for the course administrator to go in and rename the lesson. But something to remember and think about as you're splitting and combining lessons, that only course administrators can change the names, and it impacts everyone and every curriculum. What I did mention to you that we would end on are the Learn screens. And I said that for this specific lesson, I was going to reference 7.5 in my Learn screen notes. When I select this gear icon, you can see the option to open Learn. Those of you that have been using Lesson Builder may notice that this is no longer in beta. So you can go in and make those edits to your Learn screens. When making edits to Learn screens, you're going to have 3 options. You can have the entire screen that's provided by Hawks hidden. You can replace the screen with your own content. That includes text, links, and videos, or you can add on to the content that is already there. I'm going to show you each of those options. So what I did here in Chapter 7 is I decided to replace this first screen, and I entered in my own text that said, all instructional learn content for this lesson can be found in Learn for Lesson 7.5, so students know exactly where to go. With the remaining 6 screens, I hid those screens. So students aren't going to see them. They're going to see that one screen and know to go to 7.5. So this is showing how to both hide screens and replace a screen fully with your own content. I also want to show you how to embed a video and add on to a screen that is already present in Learn. Learn screen notes are a great way to customize your course for your students. We know as instructors, many of you have created notes, created videos, found really wonderful resources for your students, and adding that on to what we have in Hawks is a great way to customize your course and give students what they need to be successful. So I'll show you here how I chose to replace a screen, but unlike replacing it with text like I did previously, I wanted to replace this with a video. What I did is I took a Hawks video and I used the right click and I'm selecting copy embed code. And then back in the Learn screens, I select source and then I paste that embed code here. When I unselect source, I get this white rectangle that says iframe in red in the middle. Don't worry, that's not what's going to look like for your students. Your students are going to see the video that you have embedded into that screen. So rather than seeing the objectives, they're going to see that video. On the next slide, if you notice, I don't have hide screen or replace screen checked. So what this is going to do is it's going to keep all of the original Hawks text that you see on the top and add in what I include in the text box in the bottom. So if I want to encourage students to please watch this video, I can add my text. And I did the same thing here and used source to embed a video by right-clicking and selecting copy embed code. You can also link to a website. So if you wanted to do that, you could highlight your text and use this link and just paste the URL. Once you make any of these changes, make sure you select Save Changes at the top, and it's going to notify you. If you don't select Save Changes, you will get a pop-up reminding you that you do need to save your changes before moving on. So as you can see here, I have made some edits and changes to what students would typically see so that they're still getting the Hawks content, but I'm adding on to further customize the learn experience for my students to better meet the needs of these students. If you have any questions about Learn screens or Lesson Builder after today, again, feel free to reach out to your training rep. They'd be happy to talk you through the process, decide what might be best, whether it's splitting a lesson, reducing the number of questions, anything like that. They would be happy to walk through that with you. If you have any questions right now, feel free to type them into the Q&A. And I actually have a couple that have come in, so we'll go ahead and address those, but feel free to add any as I go over this one. So one question was about embedding videos and if it replaces the current Hawks video that would be in the lesson. If you wanted it to replace the video, you would need to go to the example page where the Hawks videos are, embed your video, and then select replace screen. And that would take your content from the text box at the bottom and replace everything that you see above. And as I was explaining that, someone asked me if we're able to look at this from the student side, which I would be happy to show you. And as I log in, I do encourage you to go in from your student view and look at any changes that you've made. I know I always do this to ensure that what I'm doing on the instructor side looks and functions how I want it to from the student side as well. So I'm going to select View Course. I'm going to show you the changes in Chapter 7 Review. As a reminder, this is where I hid 5 of the 6 screens and fully replaced the first screen. When I select Start, you can see that message here about where I need to go for the Learn content for this lesson. If I select Next, it's actually going to take me out of Learn because there is nothing else there for me to view. So that worked just how I had anticipated, so that's good news. And then I want to check 7.5 because I also made some changes there. When I select Start, you see my colleague Kristen and our customer appreciation video that has completely replaced the objectives page that was there, and I can play this right in here without leaving. So it's all right there. Then when I select Next, if you remember on this page, I didn't hide or fully replace this Learn screen. I had a video that I wanted to add in addition to the content that was already present. So what I did is I added my video, and as you can see, I still have all of the Hawks content and the video below. And just as a reminder, when you are in your Learn screens and you are making edits to your Learn screen, if you select Replace Screen, it's going to remove all of the Hawks content above and only include the content that that you have included on the bottom. This is just for the example level videos on the Learn screen. This is not going to replace the watch video that students would access by selecting the watch option in the top left. That's only going to replace the Learn screen that you are currently editing. And those are all of the questions that have come in at this time. If, again, any others come up afterwards, reach out to your designated training representative or to our team by emailing training@hawkslearning.com, and someone would be more than happy to help you. I hope that you all have a wonderful summer and that you stay healthy during this time, and let us know if there's any way that we can help you moving forward. Thank you again so much for your time, and have a wonderful day.